Is Dr. Peterson a Christian or an atheist? I believe the answer to both questions used to be yes at different points in his life. Today, he's something unique. Because he's unique, he doesn't fit neatly into the boxes we try to put him in. Christian, atheist, do you believe or not believe? These are all boxes that try to oversimplify his worldview into something the layperson can understand. If we could put him in a box, we could stop listening to him because he'd just be another Christian or another atheist. The truth is, he's not just another Christian like your grandmother, nor is he an atheist like Sam Harris. As Dr. Peterson tries to avoid these boxes, he can seem disingenuous, but I don't think he is. He's not dishonest, his truth is just complex. However, the complexity begins to unravel as you learn more about his past. Like most of us, Dr. Peterson grew up in a nominally religious household. They weren't extreme, but he attended church services with his mother. Around the age of 12, he was forced to enroll in what they called confirmation classes, basically a pathway to adult membership in the church. He didn't like it. While there, he challenged the ministers like any good atheist would. He asked them how they reconciled Genesis with modern science theories like evolution. While being challenged, even the ministers seemed to be more confident in the science than in their faith, though they were reluctant to admit it. This led the young Jordan Peterson to conclude that, quote, religion was for the ignorant, weak, and superstitious. At this point in his journey, preteen Jordan Peterson would have fit right in with the likes of Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. Many atheists make the mistake of thinking that they need to teach Dr. Peterson something. He already knows. At age 12, he was one of us. You think he forgot? Of course not. He didn't go backwards. He continued to evolve. As a young child, Jordan was religious, but by the age of 12, he was a certified atheist. To bring the point home, here's another quote. The virgin birth was an impossibility. Likewise, the notion that someone could rise from the dead. As Jordan matured into a young adult, he became concerned with making the world a better place. I think this is a common pathway for those of us who lose faith. We can't rely on God to solve our problems. We have to solve them. He began volunteering for a socialist political party and adopted the party line. Not only was Jordan an atheist, he was a leftist. Again, don't assume that you need to teach him anything. He was one of us. Just as the very young Jordan lost his faith, college-age Jordan eventually lost his belief not just in socialism, but political ideologies generally. Given that Jordan was a political science major planning to become a leftist lawyer and politician, this threw a big wrench into his life plan. He had no religious structure to guide him, and now no political structure to guide him either. When he was a socialist, the rich and powerful were the enemy. Now that he was no longer a socialist, he didn't know how to discern good people from bad people. When these political and religious structures in his life vanished, he lost his purpose and found himself wrestling with chaos. Shortly after graduating from college, he became concerned about the Cold War. He was appalled at the fact that the destruction of our future via nuclear Armageddon was an option being considered by both sides. To figure out how we could arrive here, Jordan began studying psychology in graduate school. During his studies, he began to have violent thoughts. He experienced urges to stab his classmates in the neck with his pencil. He was able to resist the urges, but the fact that he had them at all was understandably troubling. He eventually overcame his violent thoughts, only to be met with self-doubt whenever he spoke, and nightmares so horrible and consistent that he dreaded going to sleep. He became depressed, anxious, even having thoughts of suicide. Without political or religious structures to support him, he was drowning in the chaos. Jordan had to solve his problem of chaos before it figuratively or literally killed him. While he was trying to figure out how to solve it, he realized that it had already been solved. The solution was the foolish religious system that he had dismissed as a child. In this regard, Jordan Peterson personally and quite literally was saved by Christianity. Again, not metaphorically saved, literally saved. Many atheists cynically believe that Jordan supports Christianity because he thinks that other, less intelligent people need it. What they don't understand is that Jordan himself needed it. I believe that Jordan's perspective on religion can be broken down into three categories. The first category is the largest, representing the masses who were born into a particular religious structure, weren't critical of it, and were protected from the problem of chaos by default. The second category represents the people who are critical enough to view their society's religion objectively, just like they view all other religions. These people end up being atheists. Jordan himself was in this category by age 12. I say critical enough as opposed to intelligent enough because dismissing a given religion isn't a tough intellectual endeavor. It's quite easy. All religions fold like napkins when examined critically. Even religious people understand this based on how easily they can dismiss every religion other than their own. So, in my opinion, becoming an atheist is more a function of objectivity and skepticism than it is of intellect. There are plenty of intelligent religious people who simply choose not to use their intellectual firepower against their own faith. Jordan believes that these atheists in Category 2 will eventually be consumed by chaos, as he was. If they aren't being consumed by chaos, I suppose he would think it's because they are standing on a religious structure like Judeo-Christian culture while rejecting specific religious claims. Jordan today is in a third category that is quite lonely. His category represents people critical enough to throw religion away, yet supposedly wise enough to pick it back up. I believe that Dr. Peterson could present the atheistic case as well as many of the greats like Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, or the late Christopher Hitchens. He understands Category 2, but he rejects it. Why? This brings us to the power of fiction. Suppose we gathered the wisest and most intelligent people in the world, then tasked them with publishing an academic paper about the best way to live as a civilization. Their goal is to use wisdom, intellect, and science to tell us what we should do to optimize the long-run well-being of our society. Sam Harris attempted to lay out a framework for something like this in his book, The Moral Landscape. But in this case, we're not just talking about Sam's best ideas, but all of the greatest minds' best ideas. The greatest minds do their work and publish their paper. Assume that they accomplish their goal, and this academic paper contains the wisdom we need to optimize our well-being as a society. I'll pose a question. What is going to have a greater impact on people's lives? This academic paper containing the greatest wisdom in history, or The Lion King? The Lion King wins, and it wins easily. No one reads academic papers. When it comes to impacting society, stories are far more powerful than reason. Suppose that the great minds who published the paper instead transformed the wisdom within it into a story that the people loved even more than The Lion King. A story they love so much that they meet and talk about it every week for millennia. Though it's fiction, it contains the same wisdom that was in the academic paper. The people are getting the wisdom indirectly through the story, and it's protecting them from chaos in ways that they aren't even aware of. Assume we can agree that the wisdom from the research paper is true. By true, I mean it optimizes the well-being of our civilization. When it's converted into a digestible and effective form, it has to become fiction, which isn't true in the normal sense of the word. But the important part is the wisdom in it, which we agreed is true. Fiction is basically the water society needs to take its medicine. Is the water the medicine? Kind of yes, kind of no. Using fiction to protect people for thousands of years is a beautiful thing. To Dr. Peterson, religion is both true and not true. It's not true because it's fiction, but it is true because its wisdom protects us from chaos, which almost destroyed him personally. If Dr. Peterson thinks it's both true and not true, why is he resisting the atheist, choosing the lonely existence of Category 3? Because he thinks that the reasons religion is true are more important than the reasons it isn't true. Our society, and Dr. Peterson personally, needs wisdom. If it has to be delivered in the form of fiction to be effective, then so be it. During the transformation into fiction, it won't be perfect. There will be some contradictions and questionable moral situations. Not every passage will stand the test of time. But Jordan thinks that there is a mountain of wisdom protecting us that no one, including him, fully understands, and he doesn't want us to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So, is Dr. Peterson a Christian? In his own way, he believes in Christianity, and he was saved by it. At the same time, he understands that it's fiction. I believe he rejects atheism because he understands the power of fiction.